My name is Ajok. I'm the country director for childsifoundation. I have been in post for the past 1 month, and we have commenced the year on a high note, building on what we achieved in 2020. We continue to face enormous challenges with girls and women in Uganda, especially during such tough times that have emerged with COVID-19. We are observing that many of the young girls and young women are facing challenges like unplanned pregnancy. There have been disruptions to family incomes, and many young girls and young women are being pushed to fend for themselves and find an income to provide for their families. We believe that family plays an important life in nurturing and grooming our young people into future responsible citizens. However, with such tough times, it's not been possible. So what we're planning to do is that we want to develop and implement targeted interventions to support these young girls and women. At an individual level, we plan to ensure that we equip the young girls and young women with knowledge and information to help them thrive effectively during such times. This requires that we provide them with skills to cope with the situation, skills to relate with others, and also skills to be able to make effective decisions about their lives and what goes on in their families. We also plan to equip them also with knowledge to help them stay safe, especially to deal with issues like unplanned pregnancy. We will plan to equip them with knowledge about health-seeking behavior, inform them about places they can be supported with various services such as sexual transmitted disease treatment, testing for HIV, and also places where they can go to seek opportunities for livelihoods. We also hope that a big part of this is also going to involve capacity building, again equipping them with knowledge and skills to survive and generate incomes with limited resources. Young girls and women thrive as part of our community. We plan to target actors like their families, the parents, and other caregivers who interface with them on a daily basis. We also know that such actors have limited knowledge and skill on how to go about this. So our intervention will be around equipping them with knowledge and skills on how these category of people can be supported, especially the girls who are very vulnerable. We also know that our community setup has actors like the local leaders, the religious leaders, and also the central government officials. These are also very critical in ensuring that girls and young women thrive in society. So we will have interventions that will target this category of people really for the purpose of profiling their challenges and raising the importance of their engagements at this level. We also hope that this will also enable us really attract the attention of many other actors in ensuring that we achieve this mission that we are pursuing in 2021. We are hoping that all these actors, the families, the government, the parents, the caregivers will also join us in our efforts to continue ensuring that all young people thrive in a family and are not living as vulnerable orphans in the streets or wherever they might be. Because at Child's Eye, we believe that every child must thrive in a loving family and not be left to go to orphanages.
So Susan did talk a lot about women and girls and how we will be supporting them right now in the midst of the pandemic, but also beyond the pandemic. And that is what Christopher will go into a bit more detail about today. But before that happens, as I said, I'll just quickly run through the rules for this discussion so that we can make the most of it. So I did mention the recording already. I would also like to say that, and I can see that most of you have done so already, you're welcome to turn your camera on and also unmute yourself if you have any questions or any comments that you'd like to make. We will, ideally, if you can, sort of right after the video ends or Christopher's sort of discussion or Christopher's presentation ends, do ask the questions right after. If you would rather type up your questions, you can use the chat section at any point, and I'll try and pick them up while Christopher's talking. There's so many things I want to ask him as well, so do use that as much as you can. Also, feel free to use the reactions at the bottom navigation bar. You can raise your hand there if there's something that you really want to add on to any of the points that we make throughout the evening. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Christopher. I can see that your camera's on, Christopher, so feel free to unmute yourself and hello.
Hi, Paula. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope everybody can hear me well. I tend to feel like I need to speak a lot louder when I'm speaking on Zoom, but yeah, let's just hope everybody can hear me. It's so good to see so many people on this conversation tonight, and I'm really excited to be able to talk to all of you. What I'm going to do, as Paula said, is tell you a little bit about our work, tell you a little bit about our focus on women and young girls, but the videos will actually tell the better story. So, you know, I'm really pleased that you've all joined us. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy this evening. So I want to just extend some thanks as well to Kevin, who is a young carer, a young care leaver, who you'll see in a video later on. I want to thank Evelyn, our social worker, senior practitioner in Tororo. Phiona Bizzu, who is Miss Uganda 2012, who has also done an amazing video with us tonight. Mama Aidah in Makindye. These are our stars this evening. And I also want to thank our communications team, Stephen, Priska, Paula. You guys have done an amazing job putting this together. I've watched the videos, so I won't preempt what's coming. And obviously a special thanks to Allwyn Foundation, who have invested in this team, and a really warm welcome with gratitude and child's eye love to all of you here tonight. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, but I promise not to make this a presentation. Is that okay, Paula?
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
All right, let's see. Let's get it going. Right, here we are. Okay, I hope you can all see this.
Yep.
Excellent. Now, and now I can see everybody even better. Okay, so our mission is to enable Uganda, and I'm here with my Uganda shirt and my Uganda flag to my heart. So hey to all the Ugandans and the Ugandan loving people on this call. So our mission is to enable Uganda to fully commit to a nation that will curb the spread of orphanages, repurposing the orphanages that exist, and reimagining. This word reimagining is really important. Seeing things differently, the way that we care or that it cares for vulnerable children and young people. So that's our mission. Our vision is one day in Uganda, free of orphanages, all children will belong to loving or to safe and loving families. And our work is providing the blueprint for sustainable alternatives to orphanages, truly social services run by and for communities to strengthen families. So we're not doing this to communities, we're doing it with, and we're doing it for the communities to take on themselves. So what's our approach? We want to see systemic change through district and division transformation. Districts are the way that regions are divided in Uganda, and divisions is the way that regions are divided in the capital city. So there are 5 divisions in the capital city, and there are 134 districts across the whole country. We do this by strengthening the community response and social service workforce. The community response is community volunteers, and I'm going to speak a bit about them tonight. These community volunteers come from the communities we work in. So we're decolonizing communities, putting the power back where it belongs, in neighborhoods, so that they can look out for each other. We're skilling them up with social skills. We're skilling them up with child protection skills. Some of them already have skills that were trained on health and supporting families. So we're just bringing all these people together and ensuring that they can be the first responders. And then we're doing this with a team of social workers in Uganda. There's about 14 social workers in our team, all Ugandans who work in these communities. They live and are based in those communities to work with those community volunteers. And finally, we're influencing change by advocating and changing hearts and minds. And hearts and minds is an important thing. We can't do this without the policies. We can't do this unless the nation supports this. We can't do this unless supporters, donors support this. We cannot do this unless the government has policies in place to ensure that this happens. And I'll be giving you some good news about what's happening with policies. So I'm just going to leave this picture up for now. This is one of my favorite pictures taken by our producer, Stephen, who I've also thanked, and I'll leave that up there. So we're a nonprofit. We work with the government of Uganda. We implement our work with local partners, advocating for change to highlight the harm and the cost orphanages in Uganda and globally have on communities. We're Ugandan based, which means that we deliver and our evidence comes from Uganda. We collect our evidence from a Ugandan based model. And we also participate regionally in advocacy through an alliance called the Transform Alliance Africa. And Transform Alliance Africa is a group of 16 organizations from 8 countries that have come together. We're a founding member to ensure that Africa also becomes a continent that is free of orphanages. We use the UK as our global platform to amplify our voice internationally, but our team is based and living in Uganda. So we've come a long way at Child's Eye. Most of it, a lot of you know, and most of it with support from you. We're Ugandan-led, with a Ugandan team demonstrating the need for alternatives to orphanages and contributing to the global evidence needed to build the much needed momentum to achieve a world that will be free of institutions and orphanages. Let me tell you a bit about our history really quickly. In 1996, there were only 36 institutions in Uganda. In 2001, there were 88 institutions, and that rise was attributed to homes or children's homes opened to support poor and vulnerable children, often assumed to be orphans. In 2009, Child's Eye was established in Uganda. And in 2011, we helped establish a national alternative care panel, a committee of individuals, professionals like lawyers, police officers, government officers, parents, who sit around a table and discuss how children should be placed either in foster care or in adoption, but to ensure that they were not placed in orphanages. In 2012, there was a baseline carried out by the government of Uganda, some research to understand what was going on with orphanages. At this point, there were about 400 orphanages or residential care facilities, as they are called, with at least 200 additionally unknown by the government. The baseline measure, or this research, also told us that there were at least 50,000 children growing up in orphanages. And at least 60 to 80% at the time were children who had a known parent, a mother or father, or relatives that they could go back and live with. In that same year, 2012, the National Framework for Alternative Care, and this is a piece of policy and guidance that the government develops to ensure that there is an alternative to orphanages, that children don't have to go to orphanages. This policy and framework was set up. Child's Eye and our founder Lucy and a team of social workers were involved in developing that framework. This framework promoted family care and stated that institutions or orphanages would be the last resort for children if they were ever needed. In 2014, following a review of the alternative care panel that I told you about, that committee of individuals, the police officers, government social workers, parents, and other people, there was a review done on that committee. And the Ugandan government, in partnership with us, launched an amazing campaign called the Ugandans Adopt campaign. Now, some people on this call will remember that campaign. One of the most successful campaigns, not just in Uganda, but in the region, in Africa, to promote Ugandan adoption by Ugandan parents. And that review realized that over 3 years, we were able to support 60 children to go into Ugandan families. This work continues and supports an average of 30 to 35 children a year to be placed into adoptive families. Good news is this National Alternative Care Panel is now being rolled out in districts based on the model we supported the government to set up, and is now being rolled out into the districts. We've piloted this in Tororo District, where since 2018, no child has been placed in an orphanage. In 2016, along with a number of so many amazing and reputable child rights organizations that lobbied the government to make amendments to the Children Act, amendments were made that included the importance of family preservation, children in families first. So not children in orphanages, but children in families first. This also required respective ministries, the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, the Ministry of Education, both ministries that focus on children, to adopt early intervention programs that prevented the separation of children. It also addressed some loopholes around international adoption. In 2017, we were part of a 3-year study to build the evidence based on reuniting children from institutional care, preventing and also creating family strengthening programs. That same year, we also launched our Families Not Orphanages project, funded by UBS Optimus Foundation in Makindye and Tororo Division. In 2018, we arranged an educational visit, and this is exciting, with the government and UNICEF to come to Tororo to look at our practice and to see firsthand what we've done, but really to hear the voices of community leaders and community volunteers and the actors that were supporting us to create neighborhoods that would look after children and respond to the needs of children so that they didn't have to be separated from their families. On that same visit, UNICEF and the government also visited the first home we would repurpose. At that time, the home had 60 children residing in it. Today, as we speak, folks, there are no children living in that home. All those children have gone into loving families, some into adopted families. The institution of the orphanage itself has now become a community hub and a community service that provides support for women through vocational education, but also has been responsive during the pandemic to its community and to the families that we reintegrated. All these children and the families I speak of are now in sustainable families, financially and economically sustainable, and are supporting their children to thrive. In 2019, the government, in partnership with the Catholic Relief Services, CRS, and with evidence from the work that was done by us and lots of other organizations on foster care and on setting up the alternative care panels that I've talked to you about, developed the draft guidelines for foster care in Uganda. And I believe one of my colleagues that helped do that is on the call today. In 2020, there was an increased risk to already very vulnerable children and their families, likely to cause separation of children. There was also less funding going to orphanages, meaning that the care of these children in orphanages was further compromised. Some of these children were forced to return home, and a number of orphanages have struggled to maintain their services that they provide. I've often been asked about children going home. The question was, what home? Well, mostly the homes they originally came from. And I'll talk to you a bit more about that later. So in a year that seemed impossible and uncertain, our amazing team adapted to the crisis with fortitude. Our community nurse, working alongside our team of 14 qualified social workers and a network of 425 trained community volunteers, reached more families in their crisis than ever before. Despite the lockdown, between March and July 2020, we continued to deliver emergency response services in partnership with the government, introducing bicycles and smartphones supported by in partnership and supported by the Rocket Foundation. and maintained a strong community-led response and presence in the community, all led by community volunteers. So picture this. The government announces a lockdown, like for many countries across the world. Families cannot access food, they can't go to the shops, they can't access their businesses if they work outside their home. Schools are closed. And these communities are afraid of outsiders coming into their communities because of COVID-19. But also, a number of people had to leave the country. A number of organizations had to go back to their families. What was left behind were the community volunteers that we trained, people that lived next door to families that could respond to them. So in something that became the most amazing coordination system between a community volunteer and our social workers, we were able to respond to some of the most difficult situations for these families, including getting children to get treatment for things like malaria and diarrhea, because most of the neighboring clinics were closed. We have demonstrated that a community-led child protection model, a system led by the community, powered by the community, can prevent family separation, keeping children safe and families in their communities. Now, given the unprecedented times ahead of us, it is hard to predict what lies ahead, not just for us, but for many other charities. Our focus continues to be on those we support and their changing needs. We've taken the time to reflect over the past 12 months on where we have come from. This makes me and our team even more determined to do our very best to build back better for children and families in these communities. We're also inspired by the resilience, the innovation, and the commitment that the community volunteers and our social workers have shown during this period. With your help, folks, Child's Eye has emerged a leader in partnership with the government and lots of other amazing organizations during this pandemic, demonstrating how a community-led approach can act to get the right help to the right people as soon as possible. Through our established community networks, we were able to reach families that have been struggling, even before the pandemic, to deliver food, to deliver medicine, and other essentials, a lifeline to many. We worked with local governments to provide educational material, to provide hygiene equipment, hand washing stations, through the community volunteers. We also identified families that needed urgent medical attention, some children needing life-saving help because of being really sick. We visited families regularly to prevent isolation and to support mental well-being. We paid rent for those who found themselves in financial difficulty to prevent eviction, and supported families with small businesses facing the risk of losing everything. We coordinated responses that enabled us to reach women at risk of violence and delivered interventions in partnership with other charities and the police to get survivors the help they needed and the justice so that they do not return to a community where they live in fear of violence. Now, outside the existing community networks that we have already established in those 3 districts that we work in, through a COVID-19 response in partnership with the National Association of Social Workers in Uganda, a body that registers and supports social workers, and in partnership with the Ministry of Health, also funded by UBS Optimus Foundation, we visited more than 15 remote communities, including an island in Lake Victoria, to train and establish community safety and reporting programs for women and girls at risk. During this pandemic, women and girls have been greatly affected by the social economic effects. They bore and they still bear the brunt of care responsibilities as schools remain closed, as well as looking after family members that are sick or unwell. They are at the greatest risk of domestic violence and are disproportionately disadvantaged by the reduced access to sexual health and reproductive health services, as Susan said. Many of the women that we work with are employed or own small businesses in the informal economy, such as street vending. In 2020, we provided direct support to 8,920 families. 65% were women-headed households. So we have continued to support these families with income generation support, as well as making sure that they are supported within a network of their peers, where they can learn about safeguarding, financial products such as micro savings, setting up businesses, even access to health services, and the importance of gender equality in financial decision making. To build back better, we recognize the importance from our own experience and research of ensuring that we put gender equality right in the middle of the work we do. And this is best done through giving communities back the power to lead this. So I'm just going to show you a small image here of some of the peer groups of the women sitting and discussing. They've been provided with PPE. Sometimes there's good social distancing, sometimes there's not so good social distancing, but they do sit in these groups and discuss what it will look like in the future. We've dedicated time to learning what works and reflecting on how to do things better. We've listened to children, young people, and their parents. We've listened to the government, to civil society partners, to our staff, and we've also listened to you, our donors and our partners. We want to grow this amazing work. And in our penultimate year of our 5-year strategy, we look forward to using these voices to build our next 5 to 10 years. We've already put the model to test and are scaling up into central Uganda, into a district called Mpigi, where we have established some of the systems and structures required to prevent children from entering orphanages. Our social work team has followed up on over 30 children sent home from Mpigi and 17 sent home from Toro. And we are working with those orphanages to ensure that they're transitioned, not just closed, but transitioned and repurposed into community hubs that will serve their communities better. Now, we rely on our family and our community of supporters to maintain our purpose-driven work, to help build stronger communities in Uganda that keep the most vulnerable children and their families safe and together. So today, I'll end by just showing you a couple more pictures, but thank you for making this possible. So a small picture here from a virtual conference that we held in Uganda in December. It was the No Child Left Behind conference on alternative care. We held it with SOS, CRS, Child Fund, supported by the government and other partners, to highlight the progress that Uganda has made, the progress that I've just mentioned on alternative care. Another amazing image that I really like to share, a group of young women that we support in the communities we work with their children. And an amazing picture of our community nurse visiting during the pandemic children who had treatable diseases but couldn't access or get the support for medical services because most of them were closed. Our impact, which is in our impact report, I won't go into this in detail, but the two numbers I just want to remind you of, the families we reached and our community, amazing community volunteers. And folks, 57 children were transitioned out of orphanages despite the pandemic. We also worked with care leavers, young adults in 2020, and we've piloted a small program that will allow us to look at life and social skills and employability for these young people. And finally, an image here of our volunteers with their bicycles. And one of my favorite images, and this will be the end, our community volunteer, just standing and looking so proud within his community, about to deliver some food to families that need it. Thank you so much for listening to me. Back to you, Paula.
Thank you so much, Christopher. That was great. Just that run through for the entire history and everything we've done. I personally feel very proud of all this work. We welcome any questions. If any of you have any right at this moment, feel free to unmute yourself. Go ahead and ask them right now. And if not, I have one. Christopher, I wanted to come back to transitioning children out of orphanages into families during the pandemic. And I know that I have received a couple of emails from our supporters saying, read your newsletter, amazing. Wait, I don't understand. Where did these kids go? What homes? And I know that you talked about them, most of these children having families to go back to. But, and especially that we do have an update from Evelyn, our social worker. So I just wanted to ask if you could sort of talk a little bit about what does that process look like of rapidly transitioning them back in. And then I suppose after that, we could run the video from Evelyn and update to all of you.
Okay, great. I'll try and be really quick with this because I know I've said a lot and I tried to say a lot so that there were no questions. So rapidly transitioning children is actually not a great thing. And what happened is there was the lockdown and many of these institutions, some of them that operate like schools, had to close. But a number of them also didn't have funding because the funding comes from outside Uganda. These children were sent back to their biological families or families that they were known to, that they could go back to. So we often talk about 80 to 90% of children in orphanages have families they can go back to. These are the families. So what the team has done, and Evelyn will talk a bit more, is they had to work backwards. So usually we would identify the family or trace the family. We would assess that family and make sure that they were good enough or well enough or supported to receive their child. We would then prepare the child to go back home. This process can take anywhere from 6 to 8 months, sometimes even a year. But after the children have been placed, we also have something called post-placement. We follow them up, and that can take, again, up to a year. Now, we had to work backwards. We had to go and make sure that the families could support the children, that they were willing to keep and hold on to their children, that they were prepared. So you can imagine that's difficult in itself, assessing a family that already has a child and ensuring that the child is all right to be there. We worked with the probation officers, that's the government social worker, to make sure that those families were fit. And fortunately for all the families where children were rapidly reintegrated, they were really ready and fit to look after their children and wanted to be with their children. The children themselves wanted to be with their families. So Evelyn will talk a bit more, but that's what it looks like. And I haven't done it any justice because the case management process, as it's technically known, is quite a very specific and long process.
Okay, well, let's run that update from Evelyn.
Thanks.
My name is Evelyn Nanteza. I'm a social worker. I work from Tororo. Our work as social workers, we work with families. We work with children who are integrated back to their families from institutions. We ensure that children within the community are thriving well and they are well cared for within their families. During the pandemic, we were not able to carry out our work as there was a lockdown and we were not able to visit children within their families, so we had to work with community volunteers to ensure that they safeguard the children within their families. When the pandemic happened, we were not able to carry out our work well, so we had to change strategy to ensure that the children we work with are thriving and they are well cared for within their families. So we had to work more with community volunteers to help us monitor and ensure that children are thriving. When the pandemic happened, children were rapidly reintegrated, and we were not able to carry out the usual case management system we are supposed to follow to ensure that children are integrated back safely within their families. So we had to work backwards. We had to ensure that even if the children are rapidly integrated, we go back and cross-check to ensure that the families are thriving. The families were really sad because of what happened. They were not sure of the future. Very many people lost their jobs because of the pandemic. But as Child's Eye Foundation, we economically went back and empowered the families. Most of them were worried about school fees. They had most of their children back at home. So we economically empowered them. We offered psychosocial support so that the families become resilient and know that even if this has happened, the best place for a child is living within the family.
Christopher, I know Evelyn talked about providing families with different types of support, and when you did your presentation, you said the same things. You listed all the different things that they provide. And I know that obviously we'll finish this event with a lovely video, Aidah story about the support that she's received. But could you talk a little bit about the psychosocial support and the need for that, especially over the last year? And how that is provided to the families, and who does this work? So very briefly as well. I don't want you to sort of go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I won't go into that beautiful story that Mama Aidah is about to tell. So, look, psychosocial support. Our social workers are trained and qualified social workers. They're trained in Uganda. They're qualified in Uganda, but then they have additional training. And what they will do is they will have a visiting plan or a care plan for families. And that care plan will involve a number of visits that include talking to families about some of their challenges and working out a plan to work through some of their challenges. So it could be that a family has a business idea, or a family is struggling with loss and bereavement. In Uganda, we don't have a lot of services to refer families to, even though our social workers will try and identify specialist services for that support. So in that gap, the social workers are there to visit and provide that support. They will talk to families, they will work through some of their challenges, whether it's loss, whether it's grief. During the pandemic, as you can imagine, a lot of families experienced so much loss and so much grief. And so working through those things is the psychosocial approach. So it's the regular visits, it's talking through them, talking with them. I won't go into the technical aspect of how we do it and what we use to do it. And actually, I'm very pleased that we have a video where a parent talks about how that happens for her. But it's almost as if, people just need somebody to be there and to reassure them and to remind them that this is temporary and they'll get through it. So the social workers train and pass that skill on to the community volunteers, who then do it regularly for them, rather than them going to visit those families. They in turn check in, make the calls, and ensure those families are okay. If the situations become really bad or really dire, then the social worker will step in and provide the intervention.
Thank you, Christopher. And again, if any of you have any questions around reintegration work, please do ask them now. I want to talk a little bit about our work with care leavers, just because I know we do have on this call a number of people who have been supporting us for a very long time, very long time. And most of our work, from what I know about Child's Eye, having worked, with you guys for the past 2.5 years, has been, especially when I joined, around working with children and working with reintegrating children back into families. And so not even so much, I would say, working with families to prevent the separation, but was sort of the focus was around reintegration. And there are now, I see so many other elements involved in supporting families, and it's so much more holistic. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about why we work with young people, why that's important, and how do we do that, and how does that then fit in with the rest of the work that we do as an organization.
Okay, perfect. So care leavers are integral to the future of this work, and actually are the voices that we need to listen to if we want to make sure that children no longer grow up in orphanages. So the first point is giving the voice to care leavers to tell their story. And again, we've got a care leaver on the video who will be telling us their story, so I'm not going to go into it. It's so important to hear the perspective. Now, to answer your question, the reason we are working with young people, particularly young care leavers or adults or young adults, is because for the first time in the history of our work, and you're right, those who know us remember us with a baby's home, which we then closed, and then they also remember us only placing babies back in families. But here we are working with grown, young youth. We have just, we're in the process of completing the transition of a young adults orphanage. The ages are 16 to 18 years old, and actually up to 25. And as you will hear from the video, some of those children were placed in those orphanages as young as 2 or 9 years old. Imagine what it's like growing up in an orphanage from the age of 2 years old until you're 17. Now, interestingly, in this particular home, these children got education. So they actually feel that they actually got something out of it. But with the majority of them, the life and social skills was the difficulty. Knowing how to budget, knowing that you need to pay rent, even understanding that you have to open a bank account. With a lot of those young people, just understanding money or currency, how it works, trading, negotiating skills, relationship, all those life and social skills weren't taught to them whilst they were in the home. So we have taken this approach because we want to make sure that these young people are supported to transition and have the ability to come back and work with other young people leaving care to support them and to enable them to gain those very similar life skills. So there's about 33 young people, but this year, 2021, we'll be working with 17 of those young people in a life and social skills program, a mental health program that will train them to become youth champions or well-being champions for other young people. They will also become a voice. Now, we don't actually create this network of care leavers. We work with our partners, Uganda Care Leavers Network. So most of these young people will be entered and supported to become members of the Uganda Care Leavers Network, but we still have a role in transitioning them and giving them those skills. And you'll hear some of that from Kevin.
Perfect. I'll run Kevin's video now. It's a fantastic representation of this work.
My name is Nalwaga Kevin. I grew up in an orphanage and I spent 17 years in that orphanage. Life in an orphanage, it has two sides, the good one and the other one. The good side of the orphanage, you get most of the things like you want, that is school, tuition in time, feeding, and medication. Other side, missing your family. People we grow up, we don't know our family. We miss like to know where we belong, the real you. It's really unfortunate being in an orphanage to that side. I left the orphanage way after graduation at university. When I started my independent life, it wasn't easy at all because I had to look for the house which is budgetable, budgeting the income that I earn from my work. Cooking, okay, sometimes it was so terrible because we used to get food ready to eat from from our people, because we used to have people to cook for us. To socialize with the people in the community whom we didn't know, it was so hard for me. But I managed to get through those challenges by the help of Child Eyes social workers. Yes, they trained us how to manage our budgets, how to socialize with the people in the community, and how to manage our work and managers at our workplace. After leaving the university, I had to leave the orphanage and start caring about myself. Child Eyes Foundation social workers helped me to get accommodation fee and feeding for the start for 5 months. I found a job at a certain hotel, but due to COVID-19, it was closed and we were sent off. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected me because I had a plan of working for a full year 2020 to raise a capital for my business. I wanted to start my restaurant, but because I didn't raise that capital, I did achieve my goal. My dear, independent life is so wonderful and it's so interesting. From living an orphanage to independent life, it's so good. Let me tell you people, you get networking. This is where like you get to know many people in the community who are going to help you, and you get to know how to budget your life and even your income. You people, you can get, you know how good it is, like you start like now today I'll eat this, you change the diet, but in the unorganized orphanage there is this decision like we have to eat this all. Okay, it's not bad, but in the independent life, you people, it's so interesting.
I just love watching that video. Every time I watch her, I just can't stop smiling. She's so lovely. She has so much energy.
Yeah, and you know, she really does highlight the point. And again, this is the point I was making. It's really important that we listen to care leavers and understand their perspective as we shape services and ensure that we are strengthening families. It's really important. And I've enjoyed, and I know that the team has enjoyed working with the care leavers at St. Michael's. So again, to answer your question, it's because we enjoy doing it. We're working with them because we love doing it and we enjoy it.
Thank you. And we have another update from Phiona, and I just because I believe it's sort of a new friendship, relationship, connection that we have. And if you could tell everyone, and myself actually, a little bit more about how we work with Phiona, what the idea behind this work is, and maybe Phiona herself a little bit about her as a figure in Uganda.
Okay, so again, Phiona talks a bit about it, but she is the Miss Uganda 2012, and I don't think that's what really makes her special. What really makes Phiona Bizzu special is her story, yet to be told in full, and she will tell it, but she obviously shares some of it. I met Phiona at least 2 years ago, and you know, it was a social gathering. She sat next to me and told me her story, and then I said to her, "You won't believe what I do." And I explained the work of Foundation. And she said to me, "I've been dying to tell people this story, but I never have." She talked about the fact that she hadn't had a platform to share it, but more importantly, a space to work with other young people. Fiona's passion is working with young women, girls, and helping them to thrive and achieve their full potential in all aspects, whether it's business, whether it's education. And so it just seemed like a match made in heaven. So Phiona supports us. She is the queen mentor, if you like. She's teaching us what mentoring is. And she has been to some of our care leaver groups and run sessions with some of the young people, helping them to understand how to come into independence and how to plan and prepare for it. Phiona was also recently in some of the districts distributing some materials for young women. So we are not just really grateful, but we are fortunate and lucky to have a champion like Phiona Bizzu, who again, for me, isn't just Miss Uganda 2012, but is one of the most amazing young people, young women, to have lived the life experience she has lived, and to be able to just be who she is and come back and continue to be resilient and fight on. She's the voice for care leavers, or one of the voices, and she's proved this in everything she's done with us. Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Just before I play the video, just to say, I know that these videos may seem to be cut from sort of small little bits, but that's just because of the time, we were just unable to show everything that we wanted. So if any of you are interested in seeing the full length of the interviews we've done with them, do let me know, and we'd be happy to share that. So they're sort of lumped together, but I hope that that still gives you the full story that Phiona wanted to show you.
I'm Phiona Bizzu, Miss Uganda 2012. But prior to that, I was living in an orphanage called Good Shepherd's Fold in Mukono. I joined the orphanage when I was about 6 years old after my parents perished in a terrible motor accident. And living in the orphanage was a bit of both worlds. It was wonderful, it was challenging, and it took me a while to adjust. Considering I had been my mother's favorite, I missed her so much. So despite having foster moms, she still had to look after 13 to 18 other young girls. One of the other challenges growing up in the orphanage was having to learn to live with very different characters of people from all over Uganda. But I believe it has prepared me for this right now. Another thing is our voices weren't exactly heard. My sister and I left the orphanage. We were resettled when I was about 14 years, and we went to live with our church guardians. But unfortunately, his wife passed on and he remarried, so we had to fend for ourselves. So fortunately for us, when our parents passed, there was an accident compensation. So we were using that money for school fees, upkeep, and for our rent. But it was two young girls out in the world on their own, trying to find a way. And that was until A-level, when I came to Kampala, and here we are. While in my A-level, I was told that if I didn't get a government scholarship, that would be the end of school for me, because the fund was running dry, and the sponsors we had at the orphanage stayed at the orphanage. So I had to work really hard, and thank God I got a government scholarship for university, so that, you know, the rest of the money could be used for my other siblings who were in medical school. One of the major challenges I faced after the orphanage was on a personal level. Our guardian moved to the US with his wife. The next of kin we had was all the way in Lira. And so as a young lady, you need some support. So that was the thing, that was one of my major challenges. I did not know where to run. So, of course, along the way, you could mess up. Living on your own can teach you to have a backbone. You know, you have to become stronger, you have to become more flexible, and above all, you have to be smart and compassionate, because if you lose the compassionate bit of you, the world is in trouble. And for the young caregivers who are transitioning into independent living, you got this. I mean, I could do it. I could go to university on government. I could become Miss Uganda. And right now, I'm working with Child's Eye so that, you know, you have a good future too. Keep your faith strong. Let your voice be heard. And no matter what you do, be your own person. Do not let somebody try to derail you off the track of the path you're trying to pave for your future.
I love that story. It's so motivational. So, Christopher, and I know sort of running out of time, and it has been a very interesting conversation. And just to tell our participants, do ask questions if you have any, but just any closing remarks before I talk a little bit more about taking action, and then we can play Aidah's video afterwards.
No, not much really. Just to thank each and everyone that's been on this call. You know, it's evident that you can't discuss everything in an hour. It's interesting. We want to make this 45 minutes. But I'm really grateful. I could call everyone out by name. I can see there's lots of people who either support us at different points of our journey, And I hope that this session has helped you learn, have a better understanding. There's a lot on our website, but I'll leave that to you, Paula. But just thank you and our love to everybody. It's a really difficult time for charities like ours. So I just want to remind everybody that, you know, organizations like ours need a lot of support from you. And thank you for all the support you've given us, whether it's through telephone calls or checking in. We totally appreciate it. So thank you all. Thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. I'll just echo Christopher's thoughts on the fact that it has been a very difficult year, and it's proving to continue to be difficult to do everything that we do, including fundraising as a fundraiser at Child's Eye. There are all of you put together in this meeting just showcase so many different ways in which people can get involved. Just looking at all the people, you know, there are people who donate monthly, people who give sort of one-off donations to different campaigns. There are people who have fundraised for us. And there are so many ways in which you can support the work. And it doesn't only end with a financial donation. There are so many ways in which you can spread the word and awareness of the importance of this work. Of the importance of alternative care options for children in Uganda, of different ways we can care for children in Uganda, and how we can build that. Just to name sort of a few things that we're doing at the moment, we do, to start with, we do have the Giving Circle, which we launched in September last year, and it's a way to bring our supporters closer to the work, which obviously virtual open house is one of the ways we're doing it, but another way is to allow people who do give to us on a monthly basis, you know, that donation can be anything from £2 a month to, you know, as much as you can afford every month, and bring them closer to the work by sending them more regular updates from the field, giving them access to a lot more content from you know, the work of the social workers and community volunteers. So if you can join the Giving Circle by signing up to give a monthly donation, that would be wonderful. That's the best way you could support us right now. We do need a lot of that support, especially at this moment in time, to continue doing the work that we so you can sign up on our website. All of the information is there. The second thing that's quite exciting is the upcoming Mother's Day in the UK, which is the 14th of March, don't forget. We will be running an amazing campaign. It's called Every Mother, and it's a campaign to showcase different stories of motherhood and what it looks like for some people. Do get involved. I'll be asking our supporters to share a photo with them and the mother figure in their life. It doesn't necessarily have to be a biological mother. I definitely have a couple of mothers in my life, and so sharing that would be amazing, and your story and the meaning of motherhood perhaps in your life. So that will be running between the 8th and the 14th of March. So get involved and emailing you about that. And the third way is just sign up to our mailing list if you haven't done so yet. You know, we send monthly updates, and all of the work that we do, we try to sort of capture in small updates that you can read about on our website. Just looking at the chat section, Lee just messaged us to say, excellent open house, great to hear your work with the young people, and that she is having to leave early. So yes, do get involved. Email me or Christopher anytime. We are available. We are a very small team. There's only 5 of us in the UK, so we're always willing to pick up the phone, drop you an email, jump on the phone if you have any ideas. Especially now in spring, there'll be lots of things going on. Running challenges, as always, lots of those. So if you have any fundraising ideas, just get in touch and we'll get it organized for you. And to finish this off, and I know we've overrun slightly, we have an amazing story that we shared with, some of you may have seen it in December, with the, sorry, we have one quick question from Jackie, Christopher. Is there an emergency foster care program set up in Uganda? Do you want to address that very quickly before we go off?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Jackie, and I'm very happy to also email you about this separately. But yes, to answer your question, yes, there is emergency foster care. So we provide emergency foster care as part of our foster care provision. And actually, the emergency foster care is what replaced our baby's home, Malaika. So we had Malaika, and Malaika used to be the emergency placement. We replaced Malaika with foster carers. So the emergency foster carers take the babies or the children in for a short period of time whilst we trace, whilst we look, and then we'll place those children. So that's actively happening as part of the community network system. Now, we're not the only ones who provide foster care. Remember, I mentioned in my intro about the foster care guidelines that were developed in partnership with the government and Catholic Relief Services. Those guidelines are being rolled out to other organizations. So there's some other organizations that also provide foster care in different forms, but I am aware that they definitely provide emergency foster cares. And one of those organizations is a partner organization of ours called Thrive or Home Free Uganda, who have provided amazing emergency foster care all through the pandemic, even for children we work with in the Masaka and the Mpigi region. So big shout out to Thrive and Home Free. I don't know if they're on this call, but yeah, they're great.
Thanks, Chris. So thank you everyone for coming. As I said, we'll be running these on a quarterly basis. Hopefully we'll have more than 4 this year, let's hope. Do attend the future events. We'll be trying to focus them all on specific subjects just because there's so much to cover. And yeah, I'll see you there. And to finish this off, we'll be running Aidah's video, which was the focus for the Christmas campaign. But it's such a beautiful story that we just could not leave it there and not share it with you today. So thanks everyone, and here is Aidah's video.
Amanya gange nze mukyala Nambiru Aidah, nina abaana 4 bonna bawala. Taata abaana bwe yatuleka awo ne tumala omwaka nga tajja, embeera ne tukubamu n'abaana bange nga siina buyambi, siina busobozi kyonna kye njigyayo. Nze maama, nze taata. Kyekituufu nze nali ntuuse okwagala okwettira mu nnyumba n'abaana bange.
Abantu bano weesanga nga baba baweddemu essuubi nga n'ebirowoozo bye balina gye bali tebikyalina gye bibatwala. Naye ffe bwe tujja gye bali ne twogerako nabo nti bafuna omukisa okutandika okumanya obulamu obujja.
Waliwo abakulembeze abayitaayitamu ne mbayitiramu ku mbeera gye nali mpitamu n'abaana, baasigala bannambula era nga bambuulirira ne banzizaamu amaanyi. Era n'ebirowoozo bye nali nnina ne byokwetta era ne mbivaako. Ne bandeetera sukaali, ne bandeetera obuwunga, ne bandeetera sabbuuni, ne bandeetera ne ssente z'ennyumba.
In the communities where we work, mental health challenges is on the rise due to the problems that these families are facing. Some of the mental health challenges that we've encountered while working with these families are stressed, some are depressed, and others are traumatized. The COVID-19 pandemic has contributed a lot to this rise.
Childsifoundation etubangudde era naffe tusobodde okukozesa amagezi ago ge tufuna okuva eyo okusobola okuyamba families mu community yaffe.
Obuyambi bwe bampadde bunnyambye okuva mu mbeera gye nali mpitamu. Essaawa zino tuli bulungi okusinziira bwe twali emabega. Tulya, tunywa, tulina ew'okusula era kati tuli basanyufu nnyo n'abaana bange.
Counseling ayamba nnyo families zino eziba zirina ebizibu eby'enjawulo. Era bw'oba olina obukodyo obulungi obusobola okwogera n'abantu bano, bakuwuliriza era ne bakyuka.
Nkizudde bw'ofuna abantu boyogerako nabo embeera ekyuka. Kati nange bwe nafuna abantu benjogerako nabo embeera yange yakyuka. Okusinziira abakulembeze bye bazze baŋŋamba byampa okumanya nti abaana balina okukulira mu maka gaabwe.
Thanks everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us. Bye-bye to our folks from Italy, Francesca, Tia. Bye.